Hello, I'm Coach Ty, and today we're going to talk about a very uncomfortable subject. I do training and speak about a variety of different topics, mostly dealing with assets and my most recent book called Parenting a Winner. But today we're going to talk about sexual perpetrators. Most often, folks, people think about perpetrators, they lump them all in one basket and think they're all alike. That could not be far from the truth. And so today our focus is going to be contrasting and comparing the two types of perpetrators. First off, there is the molester. When law enforcement apprehend a molester for the first time, they have victimized on average 1 to 3 people. Their focus is much different also. Their focus is on relationship with their targeted victim. Now, although that is twisted, and it is absolutely deviant behavior, this is the focus of the molester, relationship. An example of a molester would be Mary Kay Letourneau. Some of you may not be familiar with who she is, but she was a school teacher in the state of Washington who was having trouble in her marriage and also had some other issues, but began to become fascinated with one of her students who happened to be 11 while she was 34. They would also end up being intimate, whereby she would become pregnant by this 11-year-old. It was found out by the authorities, and she was put on probation and told to stay away from the young boy at the time named Billy Falau. Not quite able to help herself, focused on relationship, and even being quoted on the Diane Sawyer show as saying that she felt like this child was her soulmate, she got involved with him again, got pregnant again, and did 7 years in prison for the offense. Since that time, even though her name and picture has been plastered across national and international media, there has not been, not one, not two, but no other children that have come forward that said she did that to me too. So that lets you know that Mary Kay Letourneau, the type of perpetrator she is molester. On the other side of the aisle, we have what's called a predator. This really makes it tricky for anybody that has an institution that's responsible for providing care or instruction for children or even camps. This makes it difficult for those organizations and institutions to feel like they can rule out having sexual predators amongst their workforce. Why is that? Because by the time you catch a predator for the first time, they have victimized on average 32 people, and they have no criminal record. This is why it's important for you, the listener or viewer of this video presentation, to know that the most important aspect not only is doing a background check if you are a church, youth group, or an organization that takes care of children, but also being able to recognize the signs and behaviors of these individuals, because that may very well be the only thing you have going for you to prevent an incident of sexual abuse with children that you provide care for. Their focus is victim. Victims, notches in their belt. Also, when we catch a predator, we also know that they have a propensity or a tendency to be collectors of what we know as souvenirs and trophies. That's right, underwear, undergarments of their targeted victim. Also, video clips, photographs, and that kind of thing. People that fall in the category of predators also share their content of child pornography with others that are of the same category. And yes, molesters and predators both can be pedophiles. Moving on, let's talk about predator typology. The first type of predator is known as relationship predator. This is where the individual seeks not only to groom or to win the trust of the targeted victim, but also the victim's support system, family members, and those that are very close to the child. Now, there are several examples out there that I could give you, but one that probably is fresh on the minds of most people would be the priest and those from the pulpit that seek not only to establish the trust and confidence of the targeted victim, but also the victim's family members. Is it because they are interested in their family members? Absolutely not. It's because their belief that if they win the trust and confidence of the support system of the targeted victim, then the victim themselves will feel less inclined to want to report their abuse, feeling that their entire family may turn against them because of their affinity and affection for the perpetrator, predator, pedophile. The next type of predator is called power and control. This is just the opposite of the relationship predator, in that the power and control predator seeks to separate and isolate the targeted victim, yet even turn the targeted victim in and against their support system. Oftentimes, when we find children that run away that have met someone online, we're usually dealing with a power and control predator that seeks to have nothing to do with the targeted victim's family members and support system. 3. Sadistic, and we lump them together, masochistic. Sadistic perpetrator, predator, pedophiles seek to injure their victim by leaving a signature, bite marks, cigarette burns, and aggressive sex. Masochistic perpetrator, predator, pedophiles seek to be injured or have some sort of demeaning, denigrating conduct exacted against them. An example of that comes from a case out of Cleveland, Ohio, from South High School, a school that is no longer open, where a guidance counselor sought to target two 17-year-old boys. He paid them to come by his house, where in his basement he had a pole attached to the ceiling and straps or ligatures attached to each end. He paid the boys to pick him up and tie him by his feet, his ankles, and his wrists to this pole. After this, they would beat him, and he would reach a climax. Now, this situation became quite bizarre because on one occasion, while he was in a very vulnerable state, the two young men asked for more money for their services. Well, he declined, and these two 17-year-old boys beat this guidance counselor to death. He would fall in the category of masochistic perpetrator, predator, pedophile. The last and the darkest side of this typology would be serial. This is a type of predator or perpetrator, predator, pedophile that seeks to kill their victim. In the victim selection process, the perpetrator, predator, pedophile is very deliberate, intentional, conniving, and manipulative. All of these traits and characteristics give rise to why, when we catch one for the first time, they have victimized, on average, 32 people. The first step in the stage of the victim selection process is called intent. This is where the perpetrator, predator, pedophile has what we call mens rea, or the mental mindset and understanding of what they're doing, and the intention mentally to seek out a victim to sexually abuse. The other step to intent is called actus reus, and this is a Latin word which means to act. This is where the perpetrator, predator, pedophile is engaged in some sort of conduct or behavior in preparation for the victimization prior to the assault. This could mean going out buying camera equipment by which to become a voyeur in the boys' or girls' bathroom, by taking still photographs or video clips. This could mean the perpetrator, predator, pedophile going out buying gifts, t-shirts, and the like, that he would use to manipulate a targeted child toward becoming a victim. Now, this is why in law enforcement, let's say, for example, a person had in their possession scales that are only used for weighing drugs, other drug paraphernalia, or even criminal tools, safe cracking tools. If the police pull that person over for a routine traffic stop, that person could be arrested for possession of criminal tools, even if they have not committed a criminal act, because the belief is this is in sequence with the preparation and planning for commission of a criminal act. The next phase in the victim selection process is called the interview. This is where the perpetrator, predator, pedophile actually gets into the environment of a targeted victim. The first type of interview is called silent interview. This is where the perpetrator, predator, pedophile simply goes into an environment where there are children and he's looking for the child that's all alone, that appears to have a low self-esteem, and then he takes that after acquiring this information through a silent interview, or what we also know as intelligence gathering, to the next phase, which we called overt. This is where the predator will get into the physical space of the targeted victim and do one of two things: offer them something they didn't ask for, or ask them for help. A prime example of this is the perpetrator, predator, pedophile that drives through a community after school is let out, and he has observed through a silent interview that there's always one child that always walks home all alone, doesn't have a lot of friends, and so he approaches that child and asks if he can help him find his lost puppy. So, that's just an overview. Moving to the next step, once offering or asking for some sort of assistance, the predator seeks to get the victim in a position whereby their options are cut off from stopping the perpetrator from doing what they intend to do. It gets tricky here, because if the offer has been pretty significant and inclined with something that the child is interested in, the child may very well feel like they are responsible for their own victimhood and sexual assault, and even more so be less inclined to tell the authorities or even their parents. So you see from the victim selection process, the sexual assault does not happen until the fourth step. And then the final step of the victim selection process is a reaction, and that is the predator's plan to get away with what they have done, usually by exacting some sort of leverage over the child, some sort of threat, or even continued gratuitous offers for the child that could end should the behavior stop. Now, what have we talked about? We've talked about perpetrator types. Now you know that there are two types. There's a molester and the predator, and they are not the same, but they can both be pedophiles. We also talked to you about perpetrator behavior profiles, and we talked to you about the fact that there are various types. The relationship predator, who seeks to groom the victim and their support system. Conversely, the power and control predator that seeks to isolate the targeted victim from their support system. The sadistic and masochistic predator that seeks either to injure their victim or to be denigrated or degraded by the targeted victim for pay or for some other gratuitous offering. And then finally, serial, and we know that the serial perpetrator, predator, pedophile seeks to kill their victim. Most often when we look at newspaper clippings and we watch the evening news, if we've ever come across a serial killer, it's perpetuated through the media over and over again to the point where we sometimes get the false sense that most perpetrator, predator, pedophiles are serial, and they are not. Again, they number less than 1% of all those that victimize children that fall in this category. Last but not least, in closing, the victim selection process we talked to you about has multiple phases, first starting with intent, two types of intent: the perpetrator's mindset and acts that they engage in prior to the commission of the sexual assault or abuse. The interview, this is where they get in the person's physical space and they observe them to see if they make a good victim. They will offer them something and request something. Now, positioning. Positioning is where the perpetrator, predator, pedophile seeks to get the victim into a spot, into a situation where their options are cut off from escaping or from stopping what the predator seeks to do. The assault takes place after this, and then there's a reaction. The perpetrator, predator, pedophiles plan to get away with it, which has actually been a part of the whole process all the way through. Folks, my name is Coach Ty. I do a variety of training, as I indicated earlier in this clip, for colleges, universities, social workers, educators, school systems, and also for parents. So if you'd like more information, if you'd like an actual presentation, please contact me at my email address, info@coachty.com, or take a look at my website, which is geared primarily for the college audiences and parents, but also know that this is a clip that's freestanding, and I'd be more than happy to send you some actual live clips of actual trainings with audiences that are getting the information that you've got.